Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Monday. This is the Freya-Frigga Conundrum. As promised, we are getting into it. And if you are not familiar, you didn't watch my previous series on Frigga, I explained then why I used the anglicized version of her name. But of course, Frigga, Frigg, we are talking about the same person there. But the question we're going to really delve in today is, are Freya and Frigga the same goddess, or are they different goddesses? I began investigating this question last November when I was making videos about Frigga in an effort to get acquainted with this goddess. And in the end, I more or less sent this controversy of identity just to one side. I knew I'd be doing a series on Frigga in the near future, and I just wanted time to live with the arguments for and against and think it all over. So speaking of those arguments, without turning this into an hour-long video, I'm going to give you kind of the main points for and against. We'll begin with the argument that says, yes, they are the same. And this begins with both the names Freya and Frigga stem from a much older world, Friel, which means love. And indeed, both goddesses are known for their capacity to love, albeit that Freyja is generally associated with the more romantic and the carnal forms of love, whereas Frigg is more tied to love within the context of marriage and child-rearing and caring for a household. Freya's literal meaning of her name is lady, and that's clearly just a title, so that adds to the temptation to say that Freya is merely a title by which Frigga was known, and that the perceived separation in their areas of concern is merely two halves of a greater whole. Then there's the issue of the similarities between their husbands. Frigga is married to Odin, and Freya is said to be married to Odr. And the common consensus is that this is Odin himself, just with a slightly different rendition of the name. Odin and Odr were both known to be wanderers and known to travel under a wide variety of different names, as was Freya herself. So either these ladies were sharing a husband, or we are looking at one goddess. What's also significant is that Odin splits his share of the battle dead with Freya, and that it is Freya who gets the first pick for who she wants for her half. She also chooses the seats in the hall, which is something that would be very much under the direction of the lady of the house, aka the wife. So it makes sense that Freya is Frigg, because only the wife of Odin would have such authority. On top of that, the falcon suit that enables the wearer of it to fly was available to borrow before the gods. Sometimes it's said that it belongs to Freya, other times to Frigga, and let's not forget about the whole controversy of who the day Friday is actually named in honor of. And these are just a few of the ideas that lean in favor of the argument that says that these goddesses are one and the same. There is a legitimate case here. But now for the argument that says, no, they are separate and different. To begin with, there are myths, such as the Lokasenna is just one example, that present Frigg and Freya as being completely separate. Loki insults them as separate beings, and each goddess refers to the other as a different person. This is further supported by differences in personality, temperament, and the areas in which their jobs as goddesses differed. From what I've been reading and hearing, Scandinavian societies, at least some of them, were more likely and more prone to view Freya and Frigg as being separate, as opposed to Germanic societies, where the idea is they were more interwoven. But I don't want to make too sweeping of a statement on that score, just because a lot more research is required to get into the subtleties and complexities of all that. Interestingly, people who work with Frigg or have had experiences with both Frigga and Freya, they often express a very decided view that these goddesses are completely separate. Extremely separate. It is a possibility that one sees a different side of this goddess when addressing Frigg than when they address Freya. It's a different context. This goddess is wearing different hats and eight of it serving a different purpose. But apparently these energies feel so different that many practitioners have been left with no doubt in their minds that Freya and Frigg are entirely different, and I find it impossible to ignore the weight of that testimony. So let's weigh this all out a little bit. I think both sides of this debate make excellent points that I can't easily poke holes in, and I do find myself going back and forth, and just as soon as one side has me almost completely convinced, I'm reminded of a point made by the other side, and I find myself wavering somewhere in the middle. One possibility that occurs to me is that maybe we're just looking at different life stages of a singular goddess, and we've inherited stories from a more ancient history and then from more recent incarnation of this goddess. That could certainly be going on. Another possibility I think about is that since most of us have monotheism in our backgrounds, we were raised with a simplified view of what deity is, kind of a one God fits every occasion type of approach, perhaps unconsciously we might be trying to conflate individual deities in an effort to simplify things for the sake of our own thought process, because we're used to getting, we're still becoming accustomed to the complicated realities of a pagan worldview. So that's where I'm at, wavering in the middle, not terribly sure. Now, I do believe that there is an objective reality about the identity, nature, and powers of every god and goddess. The issue is and continues to be the limitation of human perception, and how good we are at testing whether or not our perceptions are leading us towards a greater truth or if our perceptions are leading us away from it. But our perceptions in and of themselves do not determine the reality of these gods or change it in any way. I think the most any of us can do is to continue seeking, continue asking questions, continue learning, and trying to understand as much as we are able to. So, not only do I not have an answer to this question, I don't really have an answer for myself. I am not fully convinced either way. I can't dismiss anything that anyone has been brought up, which is this is a pretty unusual thing for me. Usually, I can look at an argument, see the various sides, and I'll say, okay, that's weak, so I don't have to think about that. Or this had a good case, but these holes now make that case impossible, so I set it off to one side, and I'm left with a view that I feel pretty convinced of, or at least that I feel like I could intellectually defend. That's not the case today, so enjoy the show. Brigantia being confused and not being sure. It does not happen very often, but here we are. And I would like to hear from you, either in the comments section or on Blackbird's Brew on Discord. Link to join in the description box below. What do you think? What have your experiences been? What how do you weigh out these arguments? Which side of the argument do you think has the greatest possible weight? I would be very interested to hear. But I think that's it for now, and so until next time, bye.